to all of our audiences. I am Sharanya, strategy analyst at Saro, and we are joined by Aruna Vaz.
Thank you, Sharanya, for having me on the podcast.
Okay.
True.
Now I'll be moving on to a subject without which no discussion in 2025 is complete, AI. And with EU rolling out the AI guidelines, it has become a very, very hot topic. So how
Yeah.
do you see countries like the UAE and the broader Gulf region approaching AI governance and also integration?
Great question, actually. Middle East is kind of, I would say, in some shape or form, a little ahead than the other regions, maybe. There's a lot of government support, there's a lot of funding and budgets for AI. But when EU unveiled its AI Act, rigorous, risk-based, legal binding, it set a new global benchmark. And EU is known for that. With the GDPR, we've seen that already, yeah? But Gulf nations like the UAE and its neighbors, they are taking a different but an equally strategic path. So what I mean by that is, for example, UAE, it has a soft law governance model. It's favoring ethics framework, foundational principles over prescriptive restrictions. It's the first actually to appoint the world's AI minister in 2017. UAE was the first country to do that. Yeah, it's launched its national AI strategy 2031. Sorry, just give me a minute. Sorry. So I was saying EU, it launched its National AI Strategy 2031. The main purpose of that strategy was to embed AI across sectors, whether it's healthcare, education, transport, or government services. Alongside, the UAE also has issued AI ethics guidelines, a generative AI guide. And in 2024, they introduced an AI charter with emphasis on transparency, privacy, accountability, safety, fairness, and alignment with human values. Yeah. Then we've got the financial free zones in UAE, like DIFC. They've gone one step ahead. They amended their data protection regulations in 2023 and they introduced Reg 10. I'm very happy and proud to say that I know the person who shared like maximum space on Reg 10, writing down Reg 10, and she's a very well-known figure here in the UAE. But DIFC, basically, it was the first Middle East rule addressing autonomous systems and AI. That is what DIFC did, yeah? Broader Gulf region, Saudi Arabia, we know about its Vision 2030, yeah, and its national strategy for data and AI. It's executed via the Saudi Data AI, agency. It has also released AI ethics principles and guidelines for generative AI. For now, they are voluntary, but that's something that it has released as well. I think Bahrain also stood out. In April 2024, it approved a comprehensive AI-specific regulation designed to govern users in critical areas like healthcare and impose penalties for misuse through discussions, though discussions are still going on how it is going to integrate with its existing laws. Qatar, I think in 2019, a national AI strategy with legally binding guidelines currently limited to financial institutions regulated by the central bank. And lastly, I think Oman introduced a draft AI policy. So it's not a final policy, but they do have a draft AI policy, which is based on principles of transparency and accountability. It's still pending final approval. So if you look at Middle East, actually all of them have not only pulled up their own socks and shoes as well. They've made quite a bit of progress in terms of AI. If you come to the UAE, Sharanya, anytime, you'll see in a particular month, there'll be at least 3 or 4 AI conversations or events happening across the UAE. I also co-chair the DPO club in the UAE, and we're doing an AI risk conference in the end of October. So there's a lot of talk and chatter happening on AI because it's important. People want to do it the right way. People want to understand what does the act say? What are some of the good practices that we can embed right at the beginning of their journey, rather than doing it later when it's going to be difficult to kind of implement. So yeah, there is a lot of AI governance and integration happening in the UAE. There are lots of AI guidelines as well, and a lot of people claim to be AI experts as well. So yeah, a lot is happening in the Middle East when it comes to AI.
Understood. So let's just say from a manifestation perspective or anything, I do come to the UAE, right?
Sure.
What will I mostly see? Like what would be the mindset that I would notice when it comes to AI? Are the privacy, ethical risk, and security concerns more prominent there, or is AI largely seen as an opportunity?
Strategic opportunity.
Okay.
AI is overwhelmingly been seen as a strategic opportunity here in the Middle East. There is also growing awareness of privacy, ethics and security risks. But there is also adoption, and the adoption is accelerating. Yeah, take the UAE for example. As I mentioned earlier, the UAE was the first globally to appoint a minister of AI. Yeah, in 2017, that is way before we're talking about AI now in 2025. Yeah, it launched the National AI Strategy 2031. Yeah, so they're not blind to the risk. They clearly know and their vision, and they have a vision that they know that this is a transformation journey. They clearly know that, yeah. I also mentioned about Rec 10 that DIFC introduced, particularly around transparency, fairness, and bias. So a real world case study, if I have to talk about, in Abu Dhabi, basically, they've got SEHA that has adopted AI for radiology and diagnostics, increasing diagnostic accuracy, reducing patient wait time. But before full deployment of the solution, they evaluated the solution for algorithmic bias and data security. That is something that is mandated by the local data protection authority as well, to ensure that sector-specific AI ethics guidance is taken into consideration. Another example that comes to my mind was when Saudi Data and AI Authority, SDAIA, was pushing hard on AI vision under 2030, while AI was being integrated into traffic systems, Hajj management, and even judicial analytics. They also published an AI ethics principle and guidelines on generative AI. So they're not only they're looking at all use cases of where AI can be implemented. Yeah. In a pilot with the Saudi Ministry of Education, AI was used to personalize learning as well. So there are examples of that. However, privacy advocates raise concerns about student data profiling, prompting the ministry to produce an opt-in control, thereby giving greater transparency to the parents as well, that the students can opt out from this option that was given to them. That said, in most organizations, AI conversations, risk conversations are still happening, yeah, and it's trailing innovation. Many companies are moving fast on AI pilots, chatbots, predictive analytics, facial recognition, but they're not fully addressing governance or cross-border border data handling, for example. So the appetite is high, but the maturity of controls, I believe, is still catching up. In short, I would say AI is definitely being seen as a national opportunity. As I said, there's so much of budget. We have an AI minister as well. It's being discussed in the Congress and in politics and everywhere, in schools, in use cases, etc. For example, my son had a holiday homework in mathematics, and in that they had to use AI to develop to build a model using AI and Python. It was like a probability. They had to build a roulette. You've played game of roulette, yeah? They had to build a roulette table using probability, the concepts of probability, but using AI and Python. So I'm saying it's the discussions are happening at all levels. What I like about the Middle East and the UAE is that they started at grassroots level, right from the schools. It's not just spoken about in offices. So when you're talking, if I talk to my son about data privacy, he understands it clearly. He's not a data privacy lawyer, but he knows what it means, what consent means, and he knows what I'm talking about when he says that I cannot use restricted sites and why he cannot use and how his data can be captured. Likewise, when you talk about AI and robotics, etc., children do understand that. So it's not being spoken in isolation. This is what I like about the region. So although the region is seeing it as an opportunity, it's starting to layer in ethical guardrails as adoption scales. So the challenge now for us is shifting from principles to enforceable and consistent practices. So that's something that's to be watched for in terms of how they actually enforce it. How is it practically seen, and how is it possible to do that? So that's something that I'd really like to see in the next few months, maybe.
One thing I have to say, schools have come a far way from making us draw triangles on logo. Like I would have loved projects like this as a kid.
Yeah, true. Yeah. And I'd also say, like, for example, robotics may not be for everyone. Python may not be for everyone. AI may not be for everyone. But what I have seen in my experience is that every individual needs to have a basic understanding of it in terms of how it operates. Yeah. So I may not be an engineer or to understand it the way the engineers would understand it, right? But I need to, as a risk manager, as a risk professional, I need to have basic understanding of how it operates. Only then will I be able to advise. So the more we read, the more we understand, the more we attend forums, there's a lot of guidance out there. There are lots of certifications out there. There are lots of people willing to share knowledge and information out there. So I think it's only about us going and seeking that knowledge to get more clarity.
So there is a lot of proactive integration going on there. But how do you think organizations can ensure that there's responsible AI adoption and it is in alignment with global and local laws?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So responsible AI adoption starts with recognizing that it's not a technology initiative. It's a governance and risk issue. Yep. That's what organizations need to understand. To align with global norms, say, for example, the EU AI Act, local frameworks in the Middle East, like UAE's AI ethics guidelines, or Saudi Arabia's principles, etc., organizations need to have a multi-layered approach. First, it starts with AI governance at the top. Yeah, this means setting up cross-functional AI oversight committees. These committees should involve, say, legal, risk, IT, data science, even HR. So, say, decisions are not made in isolation just by the tech teams. Yeah, all of us need to be contributors there. Secondly, we would need a risk classification for AI use cases. Is the AI being used to make financial decisions? Is the AI being used to diagnose a patient? Is the AI being used to screen job applications, for example? Classifying use cases by risk level, it helps to apply the right controls. This is what the EU Act says as well, yeah? Third, organizations must embed ethical design principles, similar to our privacy, fairness, transparency, explainability into AI deployment. What this means, understanding how the algorithms are trained, what data is being used, and being able to explain these decisions, whether it's to your regulator, whether it's to your auditors, or whether it's to your customers. From a Middle East context, for example, if you're deploying, say, an AI chatbot into a bank, you would need to ensure that it aligns with the UAE PDPL for data privacy. While it also meets DIFC's AI transparency standards if it's operating in DIFC. So it's not about one framework. You need to see which region you're operating as well. And within that also, you will have not only federal, but you'll have sectorial applications as well. Another key is vendor governance. Many AI solutions are third-party or cloud-based, right? Organizations are not developing these solutions themselves. So we are actually relying on a third party to give us or provide us with a solution. So procurement teams must start asking, does this model comply with, say, UAE guidelines or Saudi Arabia's guidelines, AI guidelines, or EU AI guidelines, etc.? Is it hosted locally? Can it be audited for bias or security vulnerabilities? Yeah, which means comes back to my earlier point. Even the procurement team needs to have an understanding of AI. Otherwise, how are they going to ask these questions? So, as a procurement person, I may think I don't need to know it. I have to just ensure I get the least cost for the organization. I make the most savings. Yeah, but it's not about that. It's about having a basic understanding so they can ask the right and relevant questions. Yeah. Finally, there's continuous monitoring. AI does not break down like traditional software, right? It evolves. And so must your controls. So basically, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? So you have to ensure that you're learning and you're training the model appropriately as well. So responsible adoption means tracking outputs over time, stress testing them for bias, and refining the models as needed. So you can't say I have a model and that's it. You have to ensure that your model is trained at continuous points in time. Yeah, your model is tested to ensure that there's no biasness within it, because then that defeats the whole purpose of the framework that is given to you, the guidelines that are given to you. Yeah. So the real goal isn't just responsible AI, it's resilient AI, a platform that performs ethically, securely, and it's compliant across borders. So that's what I would say.
Understood. This is all I had for today, but it has been an amazing conversation with you. And I would genuinely like for us to plan for another episode later on sometime.
Yeah, that would be good, Sharanya.
Thank you. We've already taken a lot of your time, and we're truly grateful that we had the opportunity to have this podcast with you. And yes, we hope you really have a great day ahead.
Thank you, Sharanya. I hope the responses were useful. The case studies or the examples that I was giving was useful. I actually thoroughly enjoyed this, to be very honest. Even whilst thinking about what I should respond, I wanted to ensure that I give relevant examples so people, can relate. And honestly, there are so many examples in the Middle East. You'll go nuts if you just kind of read it. The other day, I was talking to somebody about the roads in Middle East, right? Some are 8 lanes, some are 7-lane roads. And that person told me that we're basically looking at having self-driving vehicles, autonomous vehicles in the UAE somewhere in the future. Basically, you're not driving it, the vehicle drives itself and you're just sitting, right, as a passenger. And I said, what happens then? How are we ready? So they said, we just need to make one switch in our traffic lights and that's it.
Wow.
So they are, as in this, what I'm trying to say is they're so advanced. They thought about it
genuinely
down the line. Yeah. And they said, okay, if this changes, so then they don't have to change it all the time, right? Yeah, they'll obviously have to look, configure, so on and so forth. But I'm saying the thought process is so far away that in the sense that they've looked at so many things, not about today, about the future as well. So that futuristic thinking is so important to understand that if this is a risk. Yes, we understand it is a risk. We are prepared and we are going to get prepared. This is how we are going to get prepared. So that preparedness is so key. Not only when it's a crisis, but all throughout. So I think it's a learning process, and it's how much you learn, how soon you learn, how you can unlearn to relearn. I think that's amazing. So my last 4 years in the UAE has been an eye-opener for me as a risk manager, because the kind of scenarios that I have seen, I don't think I've seen that before in the last 15 years that I was in India. So that gives me a new perspective, that gives me a new learning. And that's why I can bring these experiences to share here on the podcast. So thank you so much for having me, actually.
Thank you so much for being here. You're talking about 4 years. These last 40 minutes have been eye-opening for me. We are truly, truly grateful to have you here, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Sharanya. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.